Welcome to the Manufacturing Roundtable podcast, where we talk to people who live the daily work of building better manufacturing businesses. I'm Eric Ciampoli. I've spent the last 2 decades working with manufacturers on lean systems, operational problem solving, and leadership development. In this episode today, I'm joined by Steve Turco. He's an experienced site manager with a deep background in process optimization, team leadership, and system design thinking. Steve has led cross functional operations, supported ERP adoption, and help manufacturing teams make real improvements that actually stick and benefit the bottom line. We're talking about what it takes to run a site, lead change, and build systems that need to be built while the factory is still running and that work, not just in theory, but on the production floor. I hope you find this conversation insightful. Let's get into it. Hi, everybody. I'm here today with Steve Turco. He's a longtime colleague and friend and customer. Steve has worked in a variety of different industries, and we've worked together in from film processing to now rubber manufacturing and manufacturing of rubber hoses. Steve brings a wide array of experience with lean manufacturing tools, both in learning and execution of them, in a variety of different applications. So we have Steve joining us here today. We thank you for taking the time out to sit with us and talk about your journey.
Thank you, Eric. It's glad to be here, and thank you for the invite, and hello to everyone out there.
So, Steve, can you tell us about your journey in manufacturing and how you came into what you do today? Some of like who is Steve and where did he come from?
So I started my journey, as you know, when coming out of college. You think you have an idea of what you want to do, but life takes you down a different path. Um, so I ended up in manufacturing. Well, actually, I ended up in manufacturing between college. Then I ended up going back later, working in a plant, and it's just something that grew onto me, and I just developed my skills through there with a company, working on the shop floor, working in, then going into quality control, going into research and development, and then becoming the planning manager for the company, and eventually the plant manager for the company. So I had a very long stint there, and that's something I enjoy because every day is different, and that took me from there into other facets of business, retail for a short period of time, and then working in more pressure sensitive tape industries, uh, high end office furniture manufacturing, pharmaceutical packaging, and then here we are today making rubber hoses. So, leading plants and making changes, doing improvements, and seeing where you can develop those relationships both from internal with your coworkers as well as external with your vendors, customers, and what have you is satisfying, and that's what makes business fun. You enjoy it. Every day is a challenge. Every day is fun to do something different. So that's what I enjoy, and that's where I've been and how I've gotten.
Yeah, there's never a dull moment in manufacturing, is there? And if there is, you get concerned.
Exactly. You don't want to be dull or out of anything to do because that's not a good sign.
So, Steve, what are some of the early lessons that you learned about how to lead effectively in an operational setting, especially in manufacturing, which with a lot of personalities and charisma, I guess you could say.
Sure. Well, one of the things that you learn is that everybody's different. So what works for one person may not work for the other. And I think that's an old adage that people know. You have to manage fairly, consistently, but some people you need to handle differently than others. Um, but the thing is you want to make sure that you get your workforce engaged. And by doing that, engaging them in change, having them help facilitate the change, having buy into the change as opposed to the resistance. Once you do that and get them involved in the solutions, they take ownership, pride, and they actually gain a lot of respect and self-worth. So that's what I use to drive forward change and growth. And you build those relationships because they're more than just an employee. They're more than just a number. They're a person. You want to talk, you know, hi, how you doing? How's the family? You don't want to get too personal, but sometimes there's something on an employee's mind. Hey, I'm there if you just need to vent, or if somebody's sick, how's your daughter doing? Is she doing better? So forth. Show that you caring goes a long way in today's environment.
Yes. I always include that in my lean training seminars. I talk about, every individual that that works with you is bringing a bit of themselves from home with them to work every day, and the experience that they had 24 hours or longer before. So the person you engage today may be different than the person that you met yesterday based on what happened after they went home. And it's important to understand what's driving that person today and what do they bring with them, because they're not just the employee. They're a dad, an uncle, a caretaker. Sometimes they have second jobs, or they have more than one persona that they live in their life, and more than just the responsibility of showing up to work every day. So, Steve, in regards to process optimization and systems levels thinking, you've been involved in back office and front office and challenges all throughout an organization, right? What are some of the examples or kinds of challenges that you've come up against in those improvement projects?
Well, one of the big ones that we had done when I worked for one of the tape manufacturer is just capacity. Being able to get more through the machine every day, in a week. Example being, we had two coating lines, one of which had about 75 to 80% of its capacity used up for one customer. So we weren't very efficient being able to drive new sales and what have you. And our coating lines were a little bit different with one another. They were pretty much, you can only run certain things on certain lines. Example is that we ran 52-inch wide film through this coating line that was 103 inches wide, 50% capacity on there. So looking at that and knowing what our bottlenecks were, I got my group together and said we need to be able to run two rolls at a time on here. It's 52 inches wide by 18,000 feet. So we looked at that and said, what can we do? First thing we need to do is talk with the customer and say, what is the absolute maximum or minimum coated width that you need on your product? So they only needed 49 inches of coated material. So now that gives me 98 inches of coated width through 103 inches. Now I have to see if I can get a wide enough film to go through the line, which I could, but what were the impediments to get through there? We were able to get a 103.5 inch wide film, but our path was blocked by some of the coating line supports. So we were able to cut the angles off to make a clear path for the film to come through. So we went over that hurdle. The next thing we had to figure out is we needed to have a dry edge dead smack in the middle of this web because we needed to create two rolls, and they had to be dry edges so they could unwind it. So we had to figure out a way to come up with something over our coating head. We put a piece of mylar tape over it to cover that one section, 1 inch wide, through the coating head. So now we had edges dry on the ends and the dry edge in the middle. We had to slit that in half on the rewind end. And now we had to deal with tensions on that rewinder that never did two rolls at a time. Work through that programming wise, as well as getting some additional hardware on our rewinders. About 8 weeks after we started this implementation or this change, we successfully ran two rolls of about 51.5 inches wide by 18,000 feet dry edge, all four edges, increased our capacity by 10 additional production days for other customers. So we were able to increase sales by $1 million over the year by doing that, thinking differently.
That's fantastic. That's the top level of getting the most juice out of the lemon, right? How did the team respond to this? Because you were breaking new ground and probably doing things that especially would make maintenance uncomfortable.
Well, sure, it was different. It was, our first was, well, it's not going to work because this, that, and the other thing. We took all those reasons and then one by one addressed them and just knocked them off and made them, again, as I had said, make them part of the solution, get their ideas. And once they started doing it, everybody was on board with it. The operators were excited about it, even though it was be a little bit more difficult for them. But the ability to do something different and make part of the change come to life was exciting for them.
That's a home run, $1 million in increased sales by not buying any machines, adding any resource, just using what you already have more effectively. That's ultimately the purpose of lean, is to get more out of what you already have and what you already do. And Steve, how do you balance the improvement process with the reality of, or the pressures, I would say, of day-to-day manufacturing operations?
Um, we always have improvement processes that we have listed that we need to do. What are the things that are going to be most impactful? what's the low hanging fruit that we can knock out quickly, and what are the ones that are really going to take some capital investment and time to do that. So we'll go and we'll work on the smaller ones, still knocking them out of the way and making improvements. But the bigger, longer tasks, really we sit down and weigh it against what our daily needs are. How much time are we going to need in our process that we're going to take away from production? What are we going to lose? Can we set aside some time down the road where we block off 6 hours, 8 hours of production time for a trial or for um, changes in what we do? So we plan that in. We get the planning group involved, customer services involved, as well as the executive group. They need to know what we're doing because we're going to impact the bottom line for that period of time. We get everybody to buy them, and we lay out
And you're going to eat up some of production time for the betterment of the long-term goals of the business. I've always recommended if you're going to do something, you got to put it in the schedule like it's a customer order. Otherwise, sales pressure always follows through and it supersedes, and then the improvements don't get done. And you're asking yourself 6 months later, how come this isn't done yet? So, Steve, what makes an improvement stick versus something that just disappears with the next wind?
continuous follow up, always making sure that we are still gaining what our original outlook was. So, it's easy to say, oh, we hit it, we're done, let's walk away, goodbye, congratulations. Follow up. When are we running it again? What's it look like next week? What's it look like next month? 6 months down the road, are we still getting the results we anticipated? Follow up. Those KPIs are crucial to success, and the people want to know how they're succeeding as well. How much improvement have we made? Has our waste reduced? Has our changeover time been reduced? How are these measurables being followed? So everybody needs to be involved in it, and everybody wants to know how they're doing. Everybody wants to do a good job. Bottom line, that everybody wants to take pride in what they do. So when you give them the pat on the back and you show them in long term what happens, it drives the future success.
Absolutely. I believe in celebrating every improvement, no matter how small it is, and making it a big deal because everyone's like, "Oh, but it's only a small amount." But a little bit every day for a long period is a lot. Like 1% better this week times 52 weeks is 52% better. That's a lot of percent. It doesn't take a lot to change the trajectory of a business and start improvements. And the longer that list of, success and things to enjoy, it gets a little bit better and better and better. And then you start to change the morale of the organization. We are that kind of place that works on improving things. We're not the things we used to complain about. Oh, no one's going to do anything about that, just ignore it. Because that's the difference between the culture of continuous change and your normal run of the mill classic non-lean manufacturing environment.
Right. The adage I always say to everybody is cold steel makes no money. What can we do to keep the machines running?
Yeah, that's a good saying.
Another perfect example is on our one coating line. We had to shut down once an hour for a splice. We would lose 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It varied. So we were able to come up with an auto splice where the machine would actually adhere to the next roll, roll, and keep the line running. So we increased our productivity time, less downtime. The material going through the machine was still usable with the exception of maybe 20 feet where the splice was.
That's cheaper than downtime.
Yep. But before that, everything through the oven, which was 100 yards long, was all trash. So we picked up additional materials that way as well. So it was a big win, and it wasn't easy. There was a lot of changes, both from a drives perspective, a process perspective, making sure everything was in line, getting the people trained on it, and not just saying, "Oh, we tried this before; it never worked." Well, we got it to work, and again, we made them part of that and let them start training the others because they took, "Hey, I'm able to do it." That's great.
And just because it didn't work the first time doesn't mean it won't be successful. Because every day there's advancements in technologies. I have this conversation. Oh, we tried that 10 years ago and it didn't work. Like 10 years ago. You realize how much the world has changed in the past 10 years? What did you try? Oh, we used this thing. It didn't work. I'm like, yeah, that's because your barcode's too small. Like you need a more power. The new camera systems are 100 times better. Try it now. And then, wow, look, it works. I'm like, okay, so when do we start? It goes a long way. And just because it failed then doesn't mean it's going to fail again. It could have been a lack of resources, inadequate technology. And as you know, like every day, there's new things coming out. And manufacturing doesn't look a lot different, but the things that go on behind the closed doors, the technology that drives the machines and the systems that run the business, they've changed dramatically in just a short period of time. So, in regards to team alignment and change leadership, what has helped you the most when it comes to getting cross functional teams aligned to get something done?
Each employee is a customer of the other. Maintenance is an employee of engineering and vice versa. They need to work with one another. What one person does affects the other. So the communication needs to be there about what changes we're making. What's the expected output? Is there anything on the other side that's going to be impacted by that? So everybody needs to work together. It needs to be a team effort. So that's critical that we have these conversations, we talk, and we banter back and forth. Are there going to be times that we butt heads? Absolutely. That's just the way it is.
That means there's passion.
Yes. Let it be constructive, and let's come out at the end of this with a path that we're going down. I don't have all the answers. I never claim to be the brightest bulb in the box, but when you bring everybody together, things illuminate, and you get to see things differently, and you start to move forward, and that's critical.
I like that you use the term customer. And there is such a thing as an internal customer. The preceding process is your vendor, and you're the customer. And when you're the person making something to give to the next step, they're your customer. You need to treat them like that. And if it's not right, that's bad for you and for them and for the business as a whole. And it's great that you use that because it's true. We have internal and external customers, and we need to service both of them with the same value and the same intent.
Yes, very much so.
So, how do you build this buy-in when people are skeptical in new systems and new changes, especially with, oh, we did this before and it didn't work? How do you get them to do that initial, I'll give it a shot?
Um, that's a great one because sometimes you do run into people who have that and they say that. You just have to communicate and say, okay, we've tried it before. Let's try it a different way. There may be something, a nuance that we did differently here. We're going to try to help facilitate a change. Or why didn't it work last time? If you were here and it didn't work, what was your reaction to it? What was your opinion on why it didn't work? What would you have done differently? Let's talk about that and help implement that as well. If you think that's going to be part of it.
Yeah, emphasizing what you learned last time and then apply it going forward.
Yeah, and if we don't have the answers, let's go find somebody who can help us. Let's get an external resource to come in with a different set of eyes and to look at something differently. You know.
Yeah, that's a valuable offering because there's someone out there who has done something different before that you can benefit from. So, what have you learned about leading change in general in environments where people are already stretched thin? Because let's be honest, manufacturing doesn't have five or six extra people just standing around waiting to do something, and everything's always a rush, and especially towards the end of the quarter and the end of the month. How have you learned how to lead these firefighting slash improvement projects in a manufacturing environment where there's always not enough people and enough resources?
Well, we have to try to work smarter. So what can we do to help improve ourselves? Um, it's okay to ask for help in certain situations to bring people in to do things differently. Jump in and where are the theory of constraints? Where are we heavy and where are we light? Where can we pull some additional resources and maybe focus on the items that are hot that we need to move? There might be one business unit that needs to have additional hands helping while the other one's a little bit easier that can handle it with less people. So you have to be able to maneuver that as well. The key to that is cross training. You have to have the people cross trained to be able to fill in and jump in. If everybody's a specialist, then you're going to be stuck in the middle because when you need to run a piece of equipment and somebody's on vacation or somebody's out sick, you're dead in the water. So the cross training is critical. And it's also good for the employee to have that additional skill and knowledge. It makes them feel more well versed.
Awesome. So, in reflection and advice for other people starting their lean journey or starting continuous improvement culture building in their manufacturing environment, If someone is trying to build better operational systems in their company, where should they start?
Start on the shop floor. Get with the people down there, talk with them, get their buy-in, get their opinions, have those conversations. That's the key. If you don't have their communication, if you're going to just dictate what's going to be done, you're going to have total resistance. You need to be able to start at the ground where the work is. Nothing's always goes by textbook. There's no ABC company. Go out there and see what's going on. Put your hands on it, feel it, touch it, understand it, talk. Start there and then work your way back to where you need to get and bring the others involved as well. So again, get resources from all facets of the business, but definitely start at the front end with the shop floor.
I can feel the experience in your voice of the, there's no such thing as a textbook implementation. And that's absolutely positively 100% true.
For sure. Excellent. I have not yet to see ABC company making widgets. I haven't gotten there.
They don't exist. It's only in the Acme Stamping Group example book. I work with companies that do the same thing, and even the two of them doing the same products, they operate entirely different than one another. So, what advice would you give someone stepping into a leadership role for the first time?
Make sure that you're personable. You know, um, lead by example. Talk. Don't be afraid to communicate to the people. Always talk to them. Always make sure that you discuss safety first, because you want to make sure your employees go home the same way they came to work. You want to make sure that that's paramount. Show them that you care about them. And then also you have to set your ground rules of what we can do and what we can't do, and you need to make sure that you're consistent across the board with that.
Yeah, sometimes it's almost along the lines of being a parent. You need to be firm, fair, but there's expectations that need to happen, and there's a little cuddling sometimes, and sometimes there's punishment.
Yes, for sure. But nobody puts baby in the corner.
Yeah, and when you do that, sometimes it can turn out for the best, and sometimes it can turn out for the worst. But those individuals that refuse to comply, they're usually just trying to test boundaries, especially when you come into a newer organization and you're starting to get the lay of the land and learn the culture of the business. The big dog likes to you know mark his territory.
Sure. Everything is a learning process. Everything. So whatever you're doing, it's a learning for somebody. So you want to make sure that coming out of it, the expectations and the understandings are there. Where did we go wrong? Where did we go right? And let's make sure that going forward, we don't have that misunderstanding or that wrongdoing again.
Have you ever asked the question? Because everyone studies when things goes wrong. Have you ever asked the question, why did it go right?
Mm. Yeah. What did we do right? You know.
It's sometimes hard to figure out why did it work, and it's very easy to pick up the shattered you know belongings and tears of things that went wrong. But when it went right, you don't always understand why. You're happy about it, but it's hard to measure. Why did it work so well? I don't know, but I'm not going to complain.
So the adage of like, what did we do wrong? Is just complete opposite. What did we do right this time?
Yeah, it's hard sometimes to pick up that trail of evidence. Is why did it work so well? Because in the past things didn't work, and we know why it didn't work, but we don't know why it worked so well.
So yeah, and you want to make sure you document those things. You want to document so you have it, so you know that hey, here's what we did last time. Here's why it worked. You know.
I always recommend that, to keep a continuous improvement log of each project, of the things that worked, that didn't work, those who contributed the most, those who contributed the least, what they had to give, so that as you're going through over the years and you're looking back, the things that you did, you can learn from some of these little pieces of information that won't always be fresh in your memory. So, Steve, what keeps you motivated to keep improving how work gets done?
It's an internal drive that I feel I have. I never want to be complacent. I've always said if I become complacent, you lose me. So I always want to learn. I always want to move. I always want to understand something different. Every day, is something different to learn something. So that's what drives me, and I hope to pass that on to the others around me. Let's learn something new. Let's do something different. Keep it fresh. It becomes mundane if it's the same thing day after day after day.
Yeah, absolutely. And nobody likes to be bored. So thank you so much, Steve, for joining us and providing your wonderful insights and leadership experience. What's one thing you want to say in closing for those out there starting their journey, and some maybe in the middle of their journey in lean leadership and continuous improvement? What do you want to share with them?
Always think positive of yourself. Always drive yourself. Never let anybody tell you you can't do something. Show them you can. And that's pretty much how I go. It's all about making a difference in the world and making a difference in people's lives. So if you touch somebody just by showing respect and caring, it means something going forward. So
Yeah, and what I've learned throughout the years is some people their home lives are in such turmoil. The time of the day that they get the most clarity and peace of mind is when they're at work. So why can't we be part of that environment and that community with our coworkers and our vendors even and those we work together with in our organization, develop the right mindset, support, positivity, encouragement, and just overall, how do we better ourselves for both ourselves, our own sake, and our own careers, and our customers and what they expect from us?
sure. I always say we spend more time with each other at work than we do with our families. So let's make it fun and enjoyable. Make the day enjoyable as much as you can. Tell a joke, have some laughs, and you enjoy it.
Mine are usually terrible on purpose. They always get remembered. The only one I got approval from my family on was my Odie joke. I asked people, why do they call it an Odie? I go, no, why? Because it's Odie. It's in the shop Odie time, and all my other jokes were all criticized that they're terrible. But that one got a gold star. But 1 out of 1,000 is not very good.
I always joke with my daughter, where I keep my dad jokes in a dad a base. That's pretty poor. It's pretty poor, but
It is. It's as bad as stairs. I never really liked stairs. And why? Well, because they're always up to something. But bad jokes can be good jokes too. Well, thank you, Steve, so much for spending this time with us and providing your insight and your experience. We really appreciate it and helping us reinforce how right leadership and the right mindset can help organizations grow and unlock better performance. And it doesn't always require a tremendous amount of money to be spent in order to fix the way an operation functions. It's sometimes even free. It doesn't cost a lot of money. What do they say? It's free to be nice. It doesn't cost you anything. So come to work every day with a positive attitude, hoping to contribute so that there's abundance in the organization for you to benefit from. You can't take everything home with you, but you can bring yourself your best person to work every day.
correct. Exactly right. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. It wouldn't be a podcast without you, Steve.
Well, thanks.
And we invite all our listeners to follow our podcast and stay connected. It will have other amazing contributing guests talking about building strong manufacturing cultures and leadership in the manufacturing community.
Thank you.